same time, you can get them in, but it's getting close. And on top of that, I want to appreciate all the ones who've already done what they're supposed to do. Now, some people don't do that. I mean, they don't wind up getting accolades for doing what you're supposed to do. But a lot of times, when you do what you're supposed to do and do it well on time, that is sometimes a rare situation. I want to appreciate everyone for all you've done. So, back to you, Kathleen.
Thank you so very much. And it is so important that we try to adhere to those deadlines and the different schedules that we have, because we are a business and we are very professional with what we do. Well, we have a treat tonight. This week we have a special presentation by an incredible young man. Donald L. Dowridge Jr. is an author of over 14 books, an actor, as you will see tonight, an activist, radio, and motivational speaker. Mr. Dowridge is a U.S. veteran and a contributing editor with the National Black Unity News. His consulting firm, DLD Enterprises, headquartered in Tampa, Florida, uses the letters from his initials DLD to stand for Determined to Learn and Develop. Noteworthy are Mr. Dowridge's awards. He received the 2013 Presidential Award for Outstanding Achievement and several awards and notable recognitions. Having gone through foster homes as a child, Mr. Dowridge grew up in Baltimore, New York, and Tampa, Florida. Triumphant is the best word that describes Mr. Donald L. Dowridge. Tonight, Mr. Dowridge will present a one-man show on the famous abolitionist Frederick Douglass. It is a show that Mr. Dowridge performs all over the United States. Tonight, I introduce you to Donald L. Dowridge as Frederick Douglass. Mr. Dowridge, go right ahead.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to bring the majority of us, if you will, and when I say the majority of us, I not only speak about us as African Americans, but America as a whole, who have either read, saw videos, and even possibly met some of Frederick Douglass' grandchildren or great-great-grandchildren. I stand before you today. No, I have not had the privilege to meet Mr. Douglass, of course, because he left here 203 years ago. However, I did have the opportunity to meet his great-great-grandson back in 2004. It is an honor to take on this role for the last 12 years as Frederick Douglass and bring his life, if you will, to life, so that it will be a teaching opportunity for those who did not know the great work that Mr. Douglass did to help assist in our freedom as black people in this country, to help to assist with women's voting here in America. So without further ado, I want to say thank you very much for this opportunity to present to you tonight as I begin. What the black man wants. Mr. President, I come here as I come always to the meetings in New England. I ask friends who are apologizing for not insisting upon this right. Where can the black man look in this country for the insertion of his rights? If he may not look to the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society, where under the whole heavens can he look for sympathy in asserting this right? If he may not look at this platform, have you lifted us up to a certain height to see we are men and women? And then, are any disposed to leave us there without seeing that we are put in possession of all our rights? We look naturally to this platform for the assertion of all our rights, and for this one especially. I understand the anti-slavery societies of this country to be based on two principles. First, the freedom of the blacks in this country. And second, the elevation of blacks in this country. Let me not be misunderstood here. I am not asking for sympathy at the hands of the abolitionists, sympathy at the hands of any. I think the American people are disposed often to be generous without a jest. I look over this country at the present time and I see educational societies, sanitary commissions, freedmen associations, and the like. They're all very good. But in regards to the colored people, there is always more that could be and is benevolent. I perceive than just manifested towards us. What I ask, I'll say again, what I ask for, the Negro, is not benevolence, not pity, not sympathy, but simply justice. The American people have always been anxious to know what shall they do with the Negro. General Banks was distressed with solitude as to what he should do with the Negro. Everybody has asked the same question: what should we do with the Negro? And as they ask the question, they eventually learn to ask it early of the abolitionists. What shall we do with the Negro? They continue to ask. I had not but one answer from the beginning. You do nothing with us. If the apples will not remain on the tree with their own strength, if they are worm-eaten at the core, if they are early ripe and disposed to fall, I say, let them fall. I am not tying or fastening them on the tree in any way, except by nature's plan. And they will not stay there. Let them fall. And if the Negro cannot stand on his own two legs, her two legs, then let them fall also. All I ask is, just give them a chance, give us a chance to stand on our own 2 feet. Let us alone. If you see us on our way to school, let us alone. Don't disturb us. If you see us going to a dinner table or a hotel or at a hotel, just leave us be. If you see us going to the ballot box, let us be. Don't disturb us. If you see us going into a workshop, just leave us be. If you see us going in a Waffle House, if you see us going in a steakhouse, if you see us going to a basketball game, if you see us driving down the street minding our business correctly, leave us alone. If the Negro cannot live by the line of internal justice, so beautifully pictured to you in the illustration used by Mr. Wendell Phillips, the fault is not yours. It will be His who made us and established that line for His government. Let Him live or die by that. If you will only untie His hands and give us a chance, I think we will live. We will work as readily for ourselves as much as we'll work for the white man. A great many many delusions have been swept away by this Civil War. One was that the Negro would not work. Well, we proved our ability to work. Another one was that the Negro will not fight. That he possesses only the most sheepish attributes of humanity. Was a perfect lamb or a Uncle Tom, disposed to take off his coat whenever required, fold his hands, and be whipped by anybody who wanted to whip him. But the war, the Civil War, has proved that there is a great deal of human nature in the Negro, human nature in us, and that we will fight for freedom. As President Quincy Adams once said, in earlier days than these, when there is a reasonable possibility of whipping anybody, it won't be the Negro. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dowridge. Before I give my comments, I would like to just ask, do we have others that would have any comments for Mr. Dowridge at this time?
Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't finished.
Mr. Dowridge, thank you. Go right ahead.
Okay, hold on. Hold on, I'm sorry. I got caught off guard.
So did I, so it's okay.
I stole these hands. I stole these feet as I ran away from my master on September the 3rd, 1838. When Anna, my wife, my free wife, managed to sell items, and not only sell items, but also provide me with a pass, a military pass. And I got on that train, and I made my way north through the Susquehanna River. And I landed in New York after a 24-hour ride. Upon arriving in New York City, I was astounded at what I saw. So many free black men and women. Well, while I was there, I was approached by Mr. Lawson. Mr. Lawson wanted me to go with him, which I did. Well, Mr. Lawson took me over to a great gentleman who was a free black man and a lawyer in New York. His name was Mr. Ruggles. Mr. Ruggles invited me in. And upon my coming in, he allowed me to stay the night. He allowed me to stay the night and have breakfast, and we chatted. And we chatted first and foremost about my name. I was born Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey. In our discussion, it was prompted that I should change my name. Well, I told Mr. Ruggles that I would change my name, and only thing about it though, I wanted to keep Frederick, my given name. So we wound up changing my last name to Johnson, Frederick Johnson. And believe me, I didn't keep that name mighty long because there's a lot of Johnsons floating around, and if you got that Johnson name, it was easy for the slave catchers to catch you. And also I should mention, even though I made my way to New York partially free, I knew that the slave owners would be looking for me, so I had to be aware not just of the blacks that were there, the whites that were there, but I also had to be aware of the whites of the blacks that were there, because they would pay off the blacks to turn in other blacks, escaped slaves. So I had to be on the lookout. Well, as I stated, there at Mr. Ruggles' house, 2 days later, I come downstairs. To my great surprise, who's sitting in the living room? No other than my beautiful wife, Anna. Yes. And from there, we made our way on up to New Bedford. When we got to New Bedford, I managed to meet another gentleman. And believe it or not, This gentleman was named Johnson, him and his wife. They invited us in. Well, we stayed there for a couple of days as well, and we talked about, again, the name. Well, Mr. Johnson had saw a play, and the play was The Lady on the Lake. And inside this play, there was an actor by the name of Douglass. His Douglass had one S. And I said, while I was sipping on my coffee at the table, I said, I like that name. I will take that name, Douglass. The only difference is, instead of having one S, I will have two S. So when you pronounce my name, you will pronounce it Douglass. You will hear the ringing of the S, such as Douglass. Well, as time moved on there in New Bedford, I started making my way, finding a job here, there, as Anna and I moved into our first home. Well, one particular day, while I was out cleaning the chimney, another black man, free man, came upon me, and he said, "Excuse me, what is your name?" I said, "My name is Frederick Douglass." He said, "Oh, you're new in these part of the woods." He said, "Look, I have a newspaper here, and it's the Columbian Orator. The Liberator. You should read it." I looked at him, and I looked at the paper, and I said, "I heard about it." And he said, "Look, the paper is 10 cents. I said, "Well, I just got here. I don't have any money." He said, "I'll give it to you." I said, No, I'm going to buy that paper from you," which eventually I did. And upon buying this paper, I realized that this paper was a very important paper because it was written for abolitionists, ones that fought for freedom, ones that were aiming to do away with slaves or slavery in the South. And I got the opportunity to meet Mr. William Lloyd Garrison, the editor of the paper. And I tell you, when I met Mr. Garrison, I had the opportunity, he invited me to speak. And can you believe, at 21 years old, I'm standing in front of all these white people, and I'm at the podium, and I'm scared as I don't know what. But I began to speak, and I went a little something like this. It is an honor to speak to you all today about my life as a slave. I was born on the Tuckahoe in Western Maryland. There was a plantation, it was called the Lloyd Plantation. And on this plantation, there were 500 slaves. My mother, Harriet Bailey, she would go 3 times a week, 12 miles. Can you imagine? 12 miles one way, 12 miles the other. That's 24 miles 3 times a week to come see me. Now, take it for granted, I never got a chance to meet my mother, speak with my mother, but she would come when I was a baby. They say I was born on February the 14th, 1818. Well, saying that, my mother, Harriet Bailey, she would come and she would rock me. And as she rocked me, she would sing to me her Valentine song. So if you ever decide to look in the history books, you'll see February the 14th, 1818. If I may, allow me to tell you a little bit about my grandmother, Betty Bailey. Now, Betty Bailey, if you would believe it, she took care of my master's whole family as a young woman. But when my grandmother, Betty Bailey, got old and senile, they put her out in a cabin by herself. And in that cabin by herself, when she died, they didn't have a proper funeral for her. They just dug a hole and they put her carcass right in the hole. And keep in mind, she kept and she watched and she babied and she changed diapers and she grew my masters. One of those masters, for what I understand, turned out to be my father. No other than Captain Ern Anthony. They called him Captain Ern Anthony because of the fact that he would roll with a captain's hat on, and on the weekends, he would float in his little sailboat on the Chesapeake. Living as a slave was the worst thing imaginable. And I say that not just because of the fact that we were made to sleep on the floor in the dead of the winter. Not because we had to sleep in, or I had to sleep in a potato sack. Not because when it was freezing cold outside that we were all bundled up together to generate heat because we did not have heat. Not because we had to take baths down in the pond with the animals. Not because. But because of the fact that the way they would whip us for no good reason at all. As a matter of fact, speaking of whippings, I recall one night I was asleep. And as I was asleep, I heard a crying, painful noise. I had to get up, and as I got up to go look to see what the noise was, it was no other than my Aunt Hester, strung up, bareback, and my master whipping her. And I heard him tell her, if I ever catch you with that other slave, Ned, I'll kill you. Now Ned was a slave from another plantation. Ned and my Aunt Hester had a thing for each other. But Master had a thing for Aunt Hester as well. That was the most frightening occurrence, most frightening night I've ever had as a child. Well, Master had a daughter. The daughter's name was Lucretia Ard. Now, Miss Lucretia did not know that I was her little brother. Now, just think about this. She's white. I'm a little black kid and a slave. Well, I have you know a secret. That Miss Lucretia Ard, she took very good care of me. No matter what happened, she took care of me. Well, this one particular day, she called me and she said, Freddie, they called me Freddie, Freddie, come. So I ran over to her and I said, yes, ma'am. Now keep in mind that we can't be looking our masters in the face. So I go, yes, ma'am. And she says, today is your lucky day. I need you to go to the big house and go up on the second floor and I need you to take a bath. A bath, ma'am? That's right, a bath. And I got up there and I looked at that water. That water was so clean and so fresh. I jumped in that water. I must have stayed in that water for about an hour and a half because I heard later on, Miss Lucretia coming screaming to Howard, Freddie, get out of that water. You've been up there too long. I said, yes, ma'am. I'll get out. Well, when I got out that water and dried off, I did not know there was a great surprise for me. And that surprise was a brand new pair of slacks, a nice shirt, and a belt, and last but not least, a pair of shoes. Can you imagine? I'm 7 years old and I never wore a pair of shoes. I'm 7 years old and I never took a proper bath. I'm 7 years old and I never had proper clothing on my body. I don't even know what it feels like. But I got the opportunity this particular day. And this particular day, they loaded me up in a cart. And we went to Baltimore. And when we got to Baltimore, Fells Point, I noticed there were 3 people standing at the door, 3 white people. One was the mother, the husband, and the little kid. As I made my way up the walkway with my head down, walking, well, I stood in front of the lady. The lady was no other than Miss Sophia Ard. The gentleman was Master Hugh Ard. And the son was Master Hugh Ard's son, Tommy. Well, when I got close enough, Miss Sophia, with my head down, she said, Frederick, look at me. I didn't look at it because I said, this lady must want to get me whipped. I'm not going to look at that lady. So she put her hand up under my chin and she lifted my face up. And when I came up, I had my eyes closed. And when I had my eyes closed, she said, open your face, open your eyes. So I opened my eyes too. No other than rosy red cheeks, big white teeth, and big blue eyes staring me down. And she said, welcome, Freddie. So Master Ard comes over and he says, Freddie, you got one job in this home. And that one job is to look after Tommy. So I was Tommy's, not friend, not brother, but Tommy's pet. Well, as time went on, Miss Sophia, she started treating me as if I was her son. Can you imagine? I went from sleeping in a potato sack to sleeping in a bed. I went from eating pig slop to eating bacon, eggs, chicken, proper meals. I went from scooping up my meal to holding forks and spoons. Yeah, they treated me just like I was a human being. Well, one particular day I was in there with Miss Sophia. She had me sitting on the couch and she said, "Frederick, I want you to help me to read." I didn't know how to read, but she wanted me to help her to read. Well, in the midst of it, we're doing our A, B, C's, and all of a sudden, the door opened up and it was Master Ard. Master Ard saw what was going on and he said, "Sophia, you need to stop teaching that boy how to read. You teach those Negroes how to read and they're going to want to take over." She responded by saying, well, here, I didn't know I couldn't teach you to read. Quickly, he says, "Well, stop doing it." Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have you know that at that time, she started treating me like a slave. The beautiful thing of it is, they would send me out on errands. They would give me some pennies. And I would go in the kitchen before I leave and I would chop up bread and stuff it in my pocket and I'll make it my way down to the store. When I get down to the store, there were poor white boys down there. They were hungry, I was hungry. They were hungry for food. I was hungry for knowledge. So as I traded off my bread, they would trade off me some knowledge. And I have you know, those little pennies that I earned, I saved those pennies. And I saved each and every one of them until I had enough to purchase me the Columbia Orator. And the Columbian Orator was a book full of speeches by great leaders, George Washington, and the list goes on. And I studied that book until I knew every word in that book by heart. As I got a little older, probably about 16 years old, I was Bronx, kind of big for my age. And Master Ard, he knew. Because he said, that boy Frederick, he's a little too smart for his own britches. So they sent me out to the slave breaker. Who was the slave breaker? No other than Master Corvée. Master Corvée broke his slaves. And the first day I walked on that plantation, I have you know, Master was whipping me. And I walked on, as I walked on the plantation, I walked like this. 3 days later, I'm walking like this. Because his intentions was to break me. And he was doing a good job. He was doing a good job until halfway through the whole year, which was the 6th month, and I said, that's it. And this particular day, we were feigning the meal. I caught a pain in my side, and he came out and he said, "Frederick, what's wrong?" I said, "I got a pain." He said, "Where's the pain?" I said, "Right here in my side." And as I went down to show him where the pain was, he kicked me in my side. He pulled a switch off the tree, and he began to whip me, busting my head wide open. And at that time, I managed to run 7 miles. I ran all the way back to Master Ard. I'll never forget it because it was a Friday evening. And when I got there, I burst in the door and I said, "Master, you have to move me because he's trying to kill me over there." Master just stood up and he said, "Frederick, you belong to him for a whole year. And if you don't go back, I'll whip you." And thankfully, Miss Sophia, she said, "Hugh, let him stay the night." And I managed to clean myself up. And the next morning I came down, I smelled it. I smelled it. I smelled the breakfast. The eggs, the bacon, and the flapjacks. And I'm toting my way down the stairwell. And when I get to the kitchen, the first thing I'm thinking, I'm going to sit down and have breakfast. I put my hand on the chair, Master just pointed. So as I went on back, I made my way back to Master Corvée, and as I went to go over the fence, he's coming with a whip. I took that leg off that fence and I ran. I come back some hours later, here he come again. Well, this time I ran and I had the great fortune of meeting a free man out in the woods by the name of Mr. Lawson, black man. Mr. Lawson and his free wife, they, they took me in. And I stayed the night. The next morning I come down, he says, come go with me, Freddie. I go to him to the woods and he digs up a rabbit foot. And he said, Frederick, put this in your right pocket. Now I promise you, that old mean master would never whip you again. And I said, oh, you joshing me. I don't believe that. He said, well, I can tell you what. Either you take it and don't get a whipping, or you don't take it, go back and you get a whipping. I took it and I put it in my right pocket. So when I got back there and I put my feet over that fence, master was coming. He was coming. But as he was coming, he didn't have a whip. So as I jumped over the fence, he came and he put his arms around me and he said, Frederick, take the day off and relax. Only thing I need you to do tomorrow, I need you to come and clean out the barn. I said, yes, master. Well, Monday morning came and I was in there cleaning that barn, and I have you know, as I was in there cleaning, he walked in the barn. As he walked in the barn, he had a switch. A whip. And he spurred that whip out and it wrapped around my arm and I pulled him. And we started tussling. Yes, we went around for 2 hours. Even the slaves came in and he was screaming to them, get Frederick off me. And they would say, I'm not going to touch Frederick. That's not my job, master. That's your job. And after 2 hours of battling it out, master and I have you know, master got to stay down and I got up. And the rest of my time on that plantation, master never raised his hands at me again. He did say that I will whip you. But I would say to myself, master don't want none of this. So the whole time I was there, he never touched me. So shortly after that, they moved me to Master Freeland's house and plantation. When I got there, I started teaching other slaves how to read. On Sundays, we would go out to the woods and I would have reading class with sometimes up to 50 slaves from the ages of 10 all the way up to 50, 60 years old. And everywhere you go, there was a Judas. There was a Judas who went and told the masters that I was out there teaching those slaves how to read. They came out and they bursted up and they took me to jail. They thought I would be angry because I was in jail. Well, I have you know, I was happy to be in jail. Why was I happy to be in jail? Because I got 3 meals, because I got a shower, and I had proper bedding. Yes. But I also will tell you, when those masters came, they wanted to take me, they wanted to hang me. And Master Ard came and he retrieved me. When he retrieved me, he said, I had the good mind to send you down to Mississippi. Ladies and gentlemen, if they would have sent me down to Mississippi, you never would have heard about a Frederick Douglass. Well, Master had the goodness in his heart to allow me to go out and get a job. Yeah, I got a job. I was a ship carker, and I was making $6 a week. I would bring my $6 and I would give it to Master. Master would take my $6 and give me one